My daughter-in-law boldly demanded, "Change your will, or you'll regret it." With a cold smile, I signed the document, seemingly agreeing to her terms. She triumphed, thinking she had won over the old miser. But when she read the fine print at the notary, her eyes widened in horror. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is in your region right now. The dinner table had never felt this cold, and it wasn't because of the Portland rain drumming against the windows. My son Timothy sat across from me, pushing mashed potatoes around his plate like a guilty child. His wife Olivia, however, had no such reservations about looking me straight in the eye. "Harlan, we need to talk about space," she said, setting down her fork with deliberate precision. Not Dad or even Mr. Mitchell. Just Harlan, like I was some stranger who'd overstayed his welcome. I took a slow sip of water. 40 years practicing estate law had taught me when to speak and when to let silence do the heavy lifting. After 38 years, I'd hoped Timothy would have learned the same from me, but he just stared at his plate. "This house is quite large," I said evenly. 3 bedrooms upstairs, my study, the guest room, plenty of space. Olivia's laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. "That's exactly the problem. You take up too much of it. Timothy and I need room to grow, to plan our future. We're thinking—" She paused, her eyes gleaming with something I couldn't quite name yet. "Maybe it's time you considered other living arrangements." Other arrangements. I let the words hang there. Such as, there are wonderful retirement communities in the area. Assisted living facilities where you'd have people your age, activities, medical care right there. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You're 68, Harlan. Don't you think you'd be more comfortable somewhere designed for seniors?" Timothy finally looked up. "Dad, she's just saying—" "I'm saying exactly what I mean," Olivia cut him off. "This house is too much for one old man to maintain. It makes sense." I carefully set down my glass. The house my parents built in 1952, where I'd raised Timothy, where my late wife Margaret had planted roses that still bloomed every spring, too much for me to maintain. "This is my house," I said quietly. "For now," Olivia replied, her voice dropping to something that might have been a whisper if it hadn't been so pointed. "For now it is." She stood up, gathering plates with aggressive efficiency. Timothy mumbled something about having work emails to check and disappeared upstairs. I sat alone at the table I'd inherited from my father, listening to Olivia bang dishes in the kitchen with unnecessary force. I should have gone to my study, should have let it go, but something made me pause at the bottom of the stairs. Their voices drifted down from the kitchen, Olivia's sharp and clear, Timothy's a mumbled bass line of agreement. "Your father is taking too long to die, Timothy. We need that money now, not when we're 50 and our lives are half over." "Live, come on, he's healthy. Could live another 20 years. Exactly my point. 20 years of watching him sit on $850,000 in property and God knows how much in savings. It's not fair. We should be enjoying that money, building something." I gripped the banister. Estate law had shown me the worst of family dynamics, the way money could turn children into vultures. I'd never imagined I'd raised one myself. "What do you want me to do?" Timothy asked, his voice weak. "I want you to convince him. Or better yet, we'll make this house so uncomfortable he'll leave on his own. And when he's gone, we sell this place and finally start living the life we deserve." I climbed the stairs to my study, each step measured and deliberate. I didn't slam the door, didn't pour myself a drink or punch a wall. I simply sat at my desk, the one where I'd drafted hundreds of wills and trusts, and stared at the Rain Street window. 40 years of knowing exactly how families destroy each other over inheritance, and I'd been blind to it happening in my own home. The signs had been there, I realized. Olivia's increasing impatience with my presence, her casual cruelty dressed up as helpful suggestions. Timothy's gradual withdrawal, choosing her over me in every small battle until there were no small battles left. Only this war I hadn't known I was fighting. But I knew now, and I had spent 4 decades learning every legal trick, every loophole, every way to protect assets from the unworthy. Estate law wasn't just about distributing wealth. It was about ensuring the right people got what they deserved. All of it. I pulled out a yellow legal pad and began to write. Not in anger, not in hurt, but with the cold precision of a professional who'd finally found a case that mattered. By the time I finished my initial notes, the rain had stopped and the house had gone quiet. Olivia and Timothy had retired to their bedroom, probably planning which retirement home to dump me in. Let them plan. I had plans of my own, and unlike theirs, mine would be legally airtight. 2 days after that dinner, I woke up thinking about the photo albums. It had been 3 months ago, maybe 4. I'd come home from my weekly coffee with old colleagues to find the trash bins at the curb, and something about the way they bulged made me check. Margaret's albums. Every photograph from our 30-year marriage, from Timothy's childhood, from family vacations and quiet Sunday mornings, all crammed into black garbage bags like they were nothing. I'd confronted Olivia in the kitchen. She was making herself a smoothie, completely unbothered. "Those were 40 years of memories," I'd said, trying to keep my voice level. She'd barely glanced at me. "They were taking up space in the hall closet, old musty books full of people who are gone." Timothy agreed they were just clutter. Timothy agreed? I'd found him in the garage. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Dad, we needed the closet space." "Liv's right. They were just sitting there. You never even looked at them." Because they were safe? Because I knew they were there? I'd rescued what I could from the bins, but the damage was done. Not to the photos, most had survived, but to my understanding of who my son had become. Now, sitting at my desk on August 17th, I added that incident to my growing list. The pattern was becoming clear. Last month, I'd asked Olivia to help me reach a box on the top shelf of the pantry. My back had been bothering me, and she was right there. She'd looked at me like I'd asked her to donate a kidney. "Get a step stool, Harlan. I'm not your servant." "I wasn't suggesting you were. I just thought—" "You thought I'd drop everything to help you. I have a life. Handle it yourself." Timothy had been in the next room. He'd heard everything. He'd said nothing. Then there was the phone call I'd overheard 2 weeks ago. Olivia had been in the living room talking to one of her friends, her voice carrying through the old house's thin walls. "The old miser sits on all that money like it actually means something. We're talking at least $400,000 in savings, probably more. Plus the house is worth $850 minimum, and he acts like we're trying to rob him when we ask for a simple loan to start Timothy's business." They'd never asked for a loan. What they'd asked for was $50,000. No terms, no repayment plan. I'd suggested a proper business loan from the bank instead, offered to co-sign. Olivia had called me paranoid. "Doesn't trust his own son," she'd laughed into the phone. "The old cheapskate hangs on to his pennies like they'll keep him warm at night." I documented each incident in my legal pad, dates and details. Habits from 40 years of building cases. Facts mattered. Evidence mattered. Emotion was the enemy of good legal work. On August 20th, I was checking the mail when Patricia Owens, my neighbor from across the street, walked over. Patricia had taught high school English for 30 years before retiring, and she had that teacher's way of noticing things. "Harlan, haven't seen you out and about much lately." "Busy with some projects," I said, thumbing through bills and advertisements. "I saw Timothy and Olivia the other day. They were coming out of Berkshire Real Estate downtown, looking quite excited about something." My hand stilled on a credit card offer. "Berkshire Real Estate?" "Oh yes, Thursday afternoon. I was having lunch at that little bistro across the street. They were very animated, talking about a future sale. I thought maybe they were planning to buy a second property, an investment or something." She smiled warmly. "It's nice to see young people planning ahead." "Very nice," I managed. "Thanks, Patricia." Back inside, I stood in my study, looking at the house I'd inherited from my parents in 1987. They'd bought it in 1952 for $12,000. Now it was worth $850,000, according to the last assessment. Prime Portland real estate, walking distance to the Pearl District, original hardwood floors, a garden Margaret had tended until the cancer took her 5 years ago. Olivia and Timothy were already planning to sell it. Not if I died, but when. Patricia had said future sale, but the excitement suggested they thought that future was closer than it was. I needed confirmation. The printer in the hall wasn't just mine. We all used it. I'd noticed Timothy printing something yesterday and leaving in a hurry. When I checked the output tray that evening, I found what he'd forgotten to collect: A preliminary property assessment from Berkshire Real Estate. My address. Market analysis showing comparable sales. And at the top, handwritten in Olivia's distinctive script, for quick sale after inheritance, not eventual sale. Quick sale after inheritance. I photographed the document with my phone before putting it back exactly where I'd found it. More evidence for the file that was growing thicker by the day. That evening I sat in my study and let myself remember the birthday party incident from last month, my grandson Jake turning 7, and me asking Timothy what time I should arrive. "Actually, Dad," he'd said, not looking at me, "Olivia thinks it might be better if you skip this one." "Skip my grandson's birthday?" Olivia had appeared in the doorway. "You have a tendency to monopolize the conversation with your old war stories about legal cases. It dampens the mood. Jake's friends don't want to hear about your glory days. You make everything about you." I'd gone anyway, arriving early with Jake's gift. Olivia's smile had been poisonous. The party had been tense, and I'd left after an hour, watching Jake's confused face in the rearview mirror. Then there was the doctor's message. Dr. Chen's office had called about my annual physical results, some concern about my cholesterol levels. They'd asked to speak with me urgently. The message had gone to the house line. Olivia had answered. She'd told me about it 3 days later, casually, over breakfast. "Oh, by the way, your doctor called earlier this week. Something about test results." "Earlier this week? When?" "Monday, I think. Or was it Tuesday?" She'd shrugged. "Does it matter?" It had been Thursday. I'd called Dr. Chen's office immediately. The receptionist had sounded relieved to hear from me. They'd been trying to reach me for 4 days about medication adjustments. Nothing life-threatening, but important. I'd hung up and looked at Olivia, who was scrolling through her phone with studied indifference. "You forgot to tell me my doctor called about medical issues." "I had a lot on my mind, Harlan. I can't be your secretary." Every incident, every casual cruelty, every calculated inconvenience, they weren't isolated events. They were part of a pattern, a campaign to make me feel unwelcome in my own home, to push me toward that retirement community Olivia had mentioned, or perhaps just to wait me out, make my remaining years miserable enough that when I finally died, they'd feel justified in celebrating their inheritance. I opened my laptop and started drafting an email to Eleanor Hayes. Eleanor had worked with me at Mitchell & Associates for 20 years, before I semi-retired and turned over active management to my partners. She was brilliant with estate documentation, meticulous about detail, and more importantly, she was someone I trusted completely. "Eleanor," I typed, "I need your help with a sensitive personal matter. Can we meet this weekend? I'm working on a will revision that requires your particular expertise. It's complex, and it's important we get every detail exactly right." Her response came within an hour. Saturday, 10 a.m., my office. Bring coffee. I smiled for the first time in days. Not a happy smile, exactly. More like the smile I used to get when I found the perfect legal strategy for a difficult case. The move that would turn everything around. Because that's what this was, really. A case. The most important one I'd ever work on. I wasn't just protecting my assets anymore. I was teaching a lesson about greed, about taking people for granted, about assuming an old man was too foolish or too weak to fight back. I'd spent 40 years showing people that assumptions could be expensive. It was time to show my own family the same thing. Saturday morning, August 21st, I sat in my study with a fresh legal pad, the same kind I'd used for 40 years of casework. At the top of the page, I wrote documentation and underlined it twice. Old habits from building airtight cases. Eleanor's office wouldn't be available until next weekend, but that gave me time to gather evidence. Not for a court of law, I didn't need that. This was for my own clarity, to ensure I wasn't overreacting, that what I felt in my gut matched what I could prove on paper. The first entry was simple. August 15th, dinner conversation. Olivia suggests retirement home. Direct quote, "This is my house." Her response, "For now." I paused, pen hovering over the page. Writing it down made it real in a different way, less like a bad dream, more like testimony. Overheard kitchen conversation. "Your father is taking too long to die. We need that money now." The pen pressed harder into the paper than necessary. I took a breath and continued documenting. The real estate consultation Patricia had mentioned, the forgotten printout I'd found, each incident, dated and detailed. My coffee had gone cold by the time I finished the initial list. 7 single-spaced pages of documented contempt. I set the pad aside and walked downstairs. The house was quiet. Olivia and Timothy had gone out. Where, they hadn't bothered to tell me. Their bedroom door stood open, and as I passed, something caught my eye. Olivia's laptop sat on the bed, screen dark, but power light glowing. I'm not proud of what I did next, but I'm not ashamed either. When someone is planning to take everything from you, you have a right to know the details. The laptop wasn't password protected. Overconfidence, probably. She'd never imagined I'd look. Her email was open. I scrolled through recent messages, and there it was, a thread with Berkshire Real Estate. The agent's name was Craig Winters. Following up on our consultation regarding 2847 Maple Street, one email began. That was my address. As discussed, current market analysis suggests optimal listing at $850,000 to $875,000. Given the property's location and condition, we anticipate a sale within 30-60 days of listing. I've prepared the preliminary paperwork as requested. We can finalize everything once you're ready to proceed. Olivia's response, dated 3 days ago. Thank you, Craig. We're not quite ready to list yet, but it shouldn't be too much longer. We'll be in touch soon. I took screenshots with my phone. Then I found another email thread that made my blood run cold. A consultation inquiry to Sunset Years Senior Living, one of those budget nursing facilities on the edge of town, the kind with complaints about understaffing and questionable care. We're inquiring about availability for a 68-year-old male, generally healthy but becoming difficult to manage at home. What are your rates for a private room, and how quickly could you accommodate an admission? The response detailed monthly costs, $4,800 for a private room, but a shared room was available immediately for $2,900. Olivia had replied, asking about the shared room option. They weren't just planning to take my house. They were planning to dump me in the cheapest facility they could find while they spent my money. I closed the laptop carefully, exactly as I'd found it, and went back upstairs. The legal pad seemed inadequate now. I opened my laptop and created a password-protected document, then transcribed everything, attaching the screenshots. The front door opened downstairs. Olivia's voice carried up. We should grab lunch while we're out. I don't feel like cooking. Timothy's murmur of agreement. The door closed again. They hadn't even checked if I needed anything, if I'd eaten. I was alone in the house they'd already mentally sold. My phone showed 11:47 a.m. I had the house to myself for at least another hour, probably 2. I spent that time making copies of every important document I owned. Property deed, bank statements, the original will I'd drafted 5 years ago, which split everything equally between Timothy and 2 charitable foundations I'd worked with over the years. That will had seemed fair at the time. Timothy would inherit the house and half my savings, around $210,000. The charities would receive the rest to continue the work Margaret and I had supported during our marriage. Looking at it now, I saw how Olivia must have viewed it. Not enough. Never enough for someone who wanted it all. I thought about Jake's birthday party again, the one Olivia had tried to exclude me from. My 7-year-old grandson, who used to run to hug me when I arrived, had seemed confused that day, distant, like he'd been told something about me that didn't match his memories. Grandpa, Mommy says you're always tired and grumpy now. Are you okay? I'd knelt down to his eye level. I'm fine, buddy. Just getting older, that's all. Mommy says old people get confused and forget things. Do you forget me? The manipulation went deeper than I'd realized. Olivia wasn't just planning to take my assets. She was rewriting my relationship with my grandson, painting me as a burden, someone to pity and eventually discard. I added that to the documentation. Not legal evidence, but personal motivation. A reminder of why this mattered, beyond money. Tuesday, August 24th. I woke to voices in the hallway outside my bedroom. Olivia and Timothy arguing in harsh whispers that weren't quite whispered enough. You need to push harder, Olivia hissed. He's stubborn. If you don't pressure him, we'll be stuck here forever. I can't just demand he change his will, Liv. That's not how it works. Then make him understand there are consequences. We control this house now. whether he admits it or not. No more cooking his favorite meals. No more including him in family decisions. Make him feel like the guest he should be. I lay perfectly still in bed, listening to my son agree to systematically exclude me from my own home. The next morning I tested the theory. I came down for breakfast to find Olivia making eggs and toast. For two. When I reached for a plate, she stopped me. "We're running late for an appointment. You'll have to fend for yourself this morning." There was no appointment. I'd checked the calendar hanging in the kitchen, empty for the entire day. This was the new strategy. Small cruelties designed to wear me down. I made my own breakfast, ate in silence while they sat across from me discussing their plans. Neither acknowledged my presence. I was a ghost in my own kitchen. Later that day, I found another forgotten printout on the shared printer. This one was a budget spreadsheet. Post-inheritance plans was the header. I scanned the columns. House sale, $850,000, minus real estate fees, $799,000. Savings inheritance, $420,000. Total assets, $1,219,000. Then the allocations, $400,000 for Dream Home in Bend, $150,000 for Timothy's tech startup, $200,000 for luxury car X2. The list went on. Travel, renovations, country club membership. Nowhere on that spreadsheet was a line item for my grandson's education. Nothing for charity. Nothing that suggested they viewed this inheritance as anything but personal lottery winnings. I photographed it, returned it to the printer tray, and added it to my growing file. By August 26th, the atmosphere in the house had shifted from cold to openly hostile. Olivia no longer bothered with pretense. She wanted something, and she wanted it now. I was reading in the living room when she walked in, Timothy trailing behind her like a reluctant shadow. She didn't sit down, just stood over me with her arms crossed. "We need to talk about your will, Harlan." I marked my page and looked up. "My will is my business. Your will is our business. Timothy is your only child. That money should go to us, to your family, not to some charities that don't even know your name." So she'd seen the original will somehow. Probably snooped through my study the way I'd snooped through her laptop. Fair enough. Those charities do important work. Margaret and I supported them for years. Margaret's dead. Olivia's voice was flat. You're spending money on the past while your actual living family struggles. Struggles? I let the word hang there. You live in an $850,000 house, rent-free. Timothy has a job. Where exactly is the struggle? "We want to start a business," Timothy said, his voice barely above a mumble. "My tech idea, the one I told you about. We need startup capital. Then get a business loan. I offered to co-sign months ago." "Banks want ridiculous interest rates," Olivia cut in. "Why should we pay thousands in interest when you're sitting on over $400,000 in savings you'll never use? You're 68, Harlan. You're not going to spend that money. You're just hoarding it." I closed my book. "What exactly are you proposing?" "Change your will. Make Timothy the sole beneficiary. No charities, no conditions, no complicated trusts. Simple and clean. Everything goes to him." "To us," Timothy corrected quietly. Olivia shot him a look, and he fell silent. "And if I refuse?" Olivia's smile was sharp as broken glass. "Then we'll have to reconsider our living arrangement. Maybe it's time you experienced one of those retirement communities we looked at. Sunset Years has immediate availability." I checked. My stomach turned, but I kept my expression neutral. "You'd move your father into a facility against his will?" "We'd move you into a facility for your own good," she corrected. "You're getting older, Harlan. What if you fall? What if you forget to take your medication? It's irresponsible for you to live alone." "I don't live alone. You're here." "Not for much longer," she said. "Not if you insist on being difficult. Timothy and I are prepared to move out. Leave you here by yourself. See how you manage then. Or—" She leaned down, her voice dropping to something almost gentle, almost kind. "You could make this easy. Change the will, ensure your son's future, and we all continue as a happy family." Timothy stood behind her, and for just a moment our eyes met. I saw guilt there, and shame, but not enough of either to make him speak up. Not enough to make him remember the man who taught him to ride a bike, who sat through every baseball game, who paid for his college education. "I need time to think about this," I said. "You've had plenty of time. We need an answer. I said I need time to think. I stood up, meeting her eyes. I'm not making major legal decisions under pressure. If that makes me difficult, so be it. Olivia's jaw tightened. Fine. Think about it. But while you're thinking, remember, Met, that we control access to Jake. Wouldn't it be a shame if you missed his next birthday too? Or if we decided to move to California? Long way to visit a grandson you never see. Using Jake as leverage. That was new, and it cut deeper than anything else she'd said. I walked past them both without another word, climbed the stairs to my study, and locked the door. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from rage I'd spent a lifetime learning to control. I pulled out my phone and texted Eleanor, "Need to move our meeting up. Can you do tomorrow instead of Saturday?" Her response came quickly. "Everything okay?" "No, but it will be. Tomorrow at 10? I'll be there." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed listening to the house settle, and to Olivia and Timothy talking in their room. Their voices carried through the old walls, low and conspiratorial. "You were too soft with him," Olivia said. "We should have given him an ultimatum." "We basically did." "No, I mean a real one. Change the will, or we call Adult Protective Services. Claim he's becoming incompetent. With the right doctors, we could get conservatorship." Silence. Then Timothy. "That seems extreme." "Extreme is wasting our 30s watching him sit on a fortune. He could live another 20 years, Timothy. 20 years. We'll be almost 60 before we inherit anything, assuming he doesn't spite us, and leave it all to charity anyway. Maybe if he just, if something happened naturally. Things don't happen naturally to healthy 68-year-olds. He could outlive us both out of sheer stubbornness?" More silence. Then Olivia again. "If the old man suddenly passed, we'd have the money within months. No more waiting, no more begging, just resolution." I stopped breathing. They were discussing my death like it was a business problem with a simple solution. Not wishing for it abstractly, but calculating it, gaming out scenarios. Timothy didn't disagree, didn't tell her she was crossing a line. He just asked, "What about the current will? It splits everything." "We can test it, claim undue influence from those charities, or diminished capacity. We'd get most of it, maybe all of it. Better than the nothing we have now." I lay in the dark, listening to my son and his wife plan my funeral before I was dead. Estate law had taught me that people were capable of terrible things for money. I'd drafted wills for families who'd stopped speaking over inheritances. I'd seen siblings sue each other, children abandon parents, marriages dissolve over estate disputes, but I'd never thought I'd raise someone capable of this. The next morning, I drove to Eleanor's office early. She took one look at my face and poured us both coffee without asking. "Tell me everything," she said. And I did. 2 hours of documentation, screenshots, overheard conversations, and the slow revelation that my family wasn't waiting for me to die naturally. They were actively planning for it. Eleanor listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with each detail. When I finished, she sat back in her chair. "Harlan, this is worse than I thought. You need to protect yourself legally and maybe physically. Have you considered—" "I'm not afraid of them," I said. "I'm angry, and I'm done being the victim in my own house." "What do you want to do?" I pulled out the notes I'd made at 3 a.m. when sleep wouldn't come. "I want to give them exactly what they're asking for. I want to change my will, make them the sole beneficiaries. No conditions, no restrictions." Eleanor frowned. "That's what they want." "On the surface. But I spent 40 years writing estate documents. I know every legal trick, every loophole, every way to make a will say one thing on page 1 and something completely different by the end." Slowly, Eleanor smiled. "You want to build them a trap. I want to build them a masterpiece, something that looks perfect until they try to use it, something that teaches them that greed has consequences." She pulled out her own legal pad. "Then let's get to work." September 1st started like any other morning, except Olivia was waiting for me at the kitchen table, with a folder and an expression that reminded me of a shark circling prey. "We need to talk," she said. "Sit down." Not good morning, not even basic courtesy, just commands. Timothy stood by the counter, coffee mug in hand, looking anywhere but at me. I poured myself coffee and sat. "What's this about?" Olivia slid the folder across the table. This is about ending the games, about you finally doing the right thing for your family. I opened the folder. Inside was a will, or what passed for one. The formatting was amateur, clearly generated from some cheap online template. Last Will and Testament of Harlan James Mitchell was centered at the top in default Times New Roman font. I scanned the document. It was simple, almost brutally so. Everything I owned, house, savings, investments, went directly to Timothy Mitchell and Olivia Mitchell in equal shares. No conditions, no trusts, no charitable bequests, just a clean transfer of assets to them. You made this yourself, I observed, noting the generic language and legal errors that any first-year law student would catch. I used legalese, Olivia said. It's perfectly valid. I checked. Of course she did. The internet had convinced a generation that you didn't need professionals anymore, just a subscription service and confidence. This removes all the charitable donations from my current will, I said quietly. Those charities don't need your money. We do. Margaret and I supported those organizations for 30 years. Olivia's jaw tightened. Margaret is gone. Your son and grandson are here now, needing your help. But you'd rather give our inheritance to strangers than to your own blood. I looked at Timothy. Is this what you want? He shifted his weight, still not meeting my eyes. Dad, it's not unreasonable. We are your family. Liv's right. It should all go to us. It's only fair. Fair. The word tasted like ash. I'd paid for his education, his first car, helped with the down payment on his own home before he sold it to move in here. I'd given him every advantage, and this was fairness. Sign it, Olivia said. Today? We'll get it notarized tomorrow. This is a major decision. I need time to consider. You've had time. Years of time. This shouldn't require consideration. It should be automatic, unless you care more about people you've never met than about your own grandchild's future. There it was again, Jake as leverage, the reminder that they controlled my access to the one pure relationship I had left. I want 2 weeks, I said. No. You'll sign it today or what, Olivia? I met her eyes directly. You'll make my life uncomfortable. I think we're already there. You'll threaten me with nursing homes? Already done that. What's left? Her face flushed. Don't test me, old man. You have no idea what I'm capable of. 2 weeks, I repeated. I'll have an answer by September 15th. 1 week, she countered. 2. That's my final offer. You can take it, or you can wait for me to die naturally, which might be a very long wait. I'm in excellent health. The calculation crossed her face. Push harder now, or accept the concession. She chose pragmatism. 2 weeks. But understand this, Harlan. If you don't sign, we will make this house unbearable. You'll beg us to send you away, and when you're gone, we'll contest whatever will you've written. We'll claim you were senile, incompetent. We'll drag your name through court until there's nothing left but legal fees. Noted, I said calmly. You think this is a game? Her voice rose. This is our future. Timothy's business opportunity, Jake's education. Our entire lives are on hold because you're clinging to money you'll never spend. You're being selfish and cruel. I stood up slowly, picking up the folder. I'll review this and have an answer for you by September 15th. Will that be all? Sign it, Harlan, or you'll regret it. Her eyes were cold. This is your last chance to do the right thing. Either you're with us, or you're against us. There's no middle ground anymore. Timothy finally spoke. Dad, please, this doesn't have to be a fight. We're family. Families take care of each other. I looked at my son, really looked at him. Saw the man who'd let his wife throw away his mother's photo albums, who'd stood silent while I was excluded from my grandson's birthday, who'd discussed my death like it was a pending business transaction. You're right, Timothy. Families should take care of each other. I'll remember that. I walked out of the kitchen carrying their template will, leaving them to interpret my words however they wanted. In my study, I called Eleanor. They just handed me their own document. Amateur hour. We need to move faster than planned. How fast? I told them 2 weeks. We need the real will ready in 1. Harlan, a properly drafted estate document takes time to... I've been drafting estate documents since before Olivia was born. I know what we need. Can you clear your schedule this week? A pause. Then, I'll make it work. This is important. More important than you know. They're not just greedy, Eleanor. They're vicious. After we hung up, I sat at my desk and read through Olivia's template carefully. It was laughably simple, full of the kind of mistakes that happened when people tried to DIY complex legal matters, missing clauses about executor duties, no provisions for estate taxes, vague language that would cause problems in probate. But most importantly, it showed me exactly what they wanted. Everything, immediately, with no strings attached. I smiled. Sometimes the best trap is the one baited with exactly what your prey desires. The next 2 days were quiet, unnaturally so. Olivia barely spoke to me, and when she did, her words were clipped and cold. Timothy avoided me entirely. They were making good on the promise to make life uncomfortable. Fine meals became sparse. The house went unheated even as September temperatures dropped. Small conveniences disappeared. My favorite coffee blend was replaced with cheap generic. The newspaper subscription I'd had for 40 years mysteriously canceled. These were petty cruelties, meant to wear me down. In a way, they were helping. Every small slight, every calculated inconvenience, hardened my resolve and justified what came next. September 4th through 10th blurred together in a marathon of legal drafting. Eleanor and I worked in her office, away from prying eyes and convenient eavesdropping. We ordered takeout and drank too much coffee and constructed what I privately thought of as a masterpiece. "Walk me through the structure one more time," Eleanor said on day 3, rubbing her temples. I pulled up the document on her computer. Pages 1 and 2 are exactly what they want. Clear, simple language. I hereby bequeath my entire estate, including but not limited to my residence at 2847 Maple Street, Portland, Oregon, valued at approximately $850,000, and all savings, investments, and liquid assets, totaling approximately $420,000, to my son Timothy Mitchell and his wife Olivia Mitchell, to be divided equally between them. No restrictions, no conditions, Eleanor noted. At least not obviously. Correct? It's perfect bait. But then we get to Section 4, page 4. I scrolled down. That's where Oregon estate law gets interesting. The section was titled Conditions of Inheritance, in 8-point font, smaller than the main text, but still legally readable. The conditions were extensive. First, the beneficiaries must maintain the property at 2847 Maple Street as their primary residence for a minimum of 10 years from the date of the testator's death, with no sale, transfer, or rental of said property during this period. Second, the beneficiaries must make annual charitable contributions of $15,000 to the Margaret Ellen Mitchell Memorial Fund, to be distributed equally among the Oregon Food Bank and the Portland Animal Shelter for a period of 10 consecutive years. Third, the beneficiaries must maintain the property in good condition, with annual maintenance costs to be documented and available for review by the estate executor. Failure to meet any single condition would trigger the alternative distribution clause. Everything would go to a charitable trust established in Margaret's name. The beauty, I explained, is that these conditions are completely legal under Oregon law. Estate law allows testators to place reasonable restrictions on inherited property. 10 years isn't excessive. $15,000 annually in charitable giving is substantial, but not impossible. Maintenance requirements are standard. Eleanor leaned back. But together, they create a cage. Exactly. Olivia wants to sell the house immediately and spend the money on luxury items. Instead, she'll be locked into living here for a decade, spending $15,000 a year on charities she despises, and unable to access the property value that represents most of my estate's worth. What if they just refuse the inheritance? Then it goes to charity anyway. They get nothing either way if they don't comply. And here's the beautiful part. I pointed to Section 7. They can't challenge the will on mental incompetence grounds because they're signing it as witnesses. Eleanor's eyes widened. You're having them witness their own trap. Oregon allows beneficiaries to witness wills, and by signing, they're attesting to my mental competence at the time of execution. They're building their own cage and locking themselves inside. What about the language? Will they notice? I scrolled through the document. The first 3 pages used 12-point font, clear and easy to read. Starting on page 4, the font dropped to 8-point. Still legal, still readable, but dense enough that casual scanning might miss the details. The legalese got thicker, too. Lots of heretofore and notwithstanding and nested dependent clauses. Olivia thinks she's smart, I said. She used an online service and thinks that makes her legally savvy. But there's a difference between reading a document and understanding it. She'll see entire estate, and 850,000 and 420,000, and she'll stop reading. The details won't matter to her because she thinks she's already won. And Timothy? Timothy does whatever Olivia tells him. If she says it's good, he'll sign. We spent the next few days perfecting every clause, every semicolon, every word. Eleanor played devil's advocate, trying to find loopholes or challenges. We closed every possible exit. On September 9th, we printed the final version, 9 pages of dense legal text that looked, on its surface, like exactly what Olivia wanted. Underneath, it was something else entirely. "Harlan," Eleanor said as we reviewed the final draft, "this is brilliantly cruel. They're going to hate you for this." "They already hate me. They hate what I represent, an obstacle to money they feel entitled to. This way, they get exactly what they asked for. They get to be beneficiaries. They inherit everything. They just have to follow a few simple rules. Rules you know they won't follow. Rules they can't follow without sacrificing everything they actually want. Olivia won't last 6 months living in this house knowing she can't sell it. She won't write $15,000 checks to charity every year. And the moment they fail—" I shrugged. "Natural consequences." Eleanor shook her head with something between admiration and concern. "You spent 40 years protecting people's estates. Now you're using all that knowledge to protect yours from your own family." "I'm teaching a lesson about greed," I corrected, "about the danger of wanting something so badly you don't read the fine print. Every client I ever had, I told them, always read the entire document. Always understand what you're signing. Olivia is about to learn why that matters." That night, I reviewed the will one final time in my study. 9 pages that would determine the next decade of multiple lives. I thought about Margaret, about what she'd think of this plan. She'd hated confrontation, always looked for peaceful solutions, but she'd also had a spine of steel when it came to protecting what mattered. She'd spent years building those charitable relationships, visiting the food bank, volunteering at the animal shelter. She'd have understood protecting that legacy, and she'd have been heartbroken to see what Timothy had become, what Olivia had turned him into. I signed the will in Eleanor's office on September 10th. She notarized it, filed a copy with her firm for safekeeping, and handed me the original in a professional leather portfolio. "Ready for Act 2? She asked. "More than ready. I've been practicing my surprised old man expression." She smiled despite herself. "You're enjoying this." "I'm enjoying justice. There's a difference." The next morning I told Olivia I was ready to sign the new will. Her face lit up with triumph, so pure it was almost beautiful. "Almost. Finally," she breathed. "You're seeing sense." "I've had time to think," I said. "You're right. Family should come first. I've arranged for us to meet with a notary on September 15th. Everything will be official." "What notary?" "Jonathan Wright. Professional, discreet, highly regarded. I want this done properly." Olivia studied me suspiciously. "You're being very agreeable." "I'm being realistic. You made your position clear. This is the only way forward." I smiled, just a little. "Don't worry, Olivia. You'll get exactly what you deserve." September 12th. I walked into the kitchen where Olivia was making breakfast. Well, making herself breakfast. The exclusion tactics hadn't stopped. "I'm ready," I said. She turned, spatula in hand. "Ready for what?" "To sign the new will. You were right. Family should come first." The spatula clattered into the pan. Her eyes went wide, then narrowed with suspicion. "You're serious?" "Completely. I've had time to think. You and Timothy are my family. The charities will survive without my money. You need it more." I paused for effect. "I've scheduled an appointment with Jonathan Wright for September 15th. He's a notary, very professional, very discreet." "Jonathan Wright?" She was already pulling out her phone, probably Googling him. "One of the best in Portland. I want this done properly. No questions about validity later." Olivia found what she was looking for on her screen. Her expression shifted from suspicion to triumph. "He has excellent reviews." I don't cut corners, not even when I'm surrendering. The word tasted bitter, but I delivered it with just the right amount of resignation. Timothy appeared in the doorway, still in his pajamas. Dad? Did I hear that right? Your father has finally seen reason, Olivia said, her voice practically purring with satisfaction. He's signing over everything. No more fighting, no more drama. Just family taking care of family. Timothy looked at me, and for just a second I saw something in his eyes. Guilt, maybe, or the ghost of the boy who used to trust me. It vanished quickly. That's great, Dad. Really. It's what you wanted, I said simply. The next 3 days were almost pleasant. Olivia stopped her petty cruelties. She actually cooked a decent meal. Nothing special, but better than the leftovers and frozen dinners I'd been getting. Timothy tried to make conversation, awkward attempts to rebuild bridges he'd helped burn. I played along, smiled at the right moments, accepted their sudden kindness with quiet grace. Inside, I was counting down hours. September 15th arrived with gray skies and the threat of rain. Appropriate weather for a funeral or a legal execution. Jonathan Wright's office was in a renovated brownstone downtown, all polished wood and leather-bound law books. He'd been expecting us. Eleanor had briefed him thoroughly on what to expect. Jonathan stood when we entered, professional and unreadable. He was younger than me, maybe 45, with the kind of steady competence that came from years of witnessing human nature at its worst and maintaining neutrality. Mr. Mitchell, he said, shaking my hand, and you must be Timothy and Olivia. Olivia's smile was radiant. She dressed for the occasion, expensive blazer, perfect makeup, celebrating victory before it was won. Classic overconfidence. Thank you for fitting us in, she said. We know you're busy. Estate matters are always important, Jonathan replied, his tone giving nothing away. He gestured to the conference table. Please sit. Mr. Mitchell, you have the document? I pulled the leather portfolio from my bag and handed it to him. Jonathan opened it, scanning the first page with practiced efficiency. This appears to be in order. Have you all had a chance to review the full document? I have, I said. We've discussed it extensively, Olivia added quickly. Too quickly. Jonathan's eyes flicked to her, then to the document. And you've read through all 9 pages? 9 pages. I saw Olivia's expression freeze for just a fraction of a second. She'd assumed it would be like her template. 2, maybe 3 pages. But she recovered smoothly. Of course, it's very thorough. Liar. But Jonathan wouldn't call her on it. That wasn't his job. Very well, Mr. Mitchell. If you'll sign here, here, and initial here. He indicated the marked pages with professional precision. I signed slowly, carefully. My handwriting was steady, no tremors of age or uncertainty. 40 years of signing legal documents had taught me the importance of clear, deliberate signatures. Excellent. Now, witnesses. Jonathan looked at Timothy and Olivia. You'll both need to sign here, indicating you witnessed Mr. Mitchell's signature and that he appeared to be of sound mind and acting of his own free will. He's definitely of sound mind, Olivia said, the irony apparently lost on her. Finally! She signed on page 2 without hesitation. Her handwriting was bold, confident. She didn't even glance at the pages beneath. Timothy signed next, barely looking at the document. They were sealing their own fate with expensive ink on premium paper, and they had no idea. Jonathan notarized each signature with his official seal, then placed the document in a protective folder. This will be filed with my office for safekeeping. You'll each receive certified copies within 3 business days. Perfect, Olivia said. She was already standing, already mentally counting her money. Thank you so much, Mr. Right. My pleasure. His expression remained professionally neutral, but I caught the briefest flicker of something in his eyes when he looked at me. Understanding, maybe, or pity for what was about to unfold. We walked out into the gray Portland afternoon. I felt lighter than I had in months. Well, Olivia said as we reached the car, that's finally done. You made the right choice, Harlan. You really did. I'm sure I did, I replied. She couldn't contain herself anymore. On the drive home, she started planning out loud. We should talk to that real estate agent again, Craig Winters. Get the house properly appraised, staged for sale. With the market the way it is, we could probably get $900,000 if we time it right. Timothy glanced at me in the rearview mirror. Maybe we should wait a bit before... Wait for what? Olivia cut him off. The will is signed. Everything's settled. There's no reason to delay our plans. The will takes effect upon my death, I pointed out mildly. I'm not dead yet. Obviously, but we can prepare. Maybe take out a loan against the inheritance. The bank would give us at least $200,000 with this kind of collateral. I said nothing. Let her dream. Let her plan. The higher she climbed, the harder the fall. That evening I sat in my study with a glass of whiskey. Good whiskey, the bottle I'd been saving for something worth celebrating. Through the walls I could hear Olivia on the phone with one of her friends, voice bright with triumph. Finally convinced the old man, everything to us, no stupid charity clauses. We'll be set for life. I smiled into my glass. Not quite, Olivia. Not quite. September 16th. I was reading the newspaper when Olivia came downstairs, phone in hand and purpose in her step. I'm going to the bank, she announced, to discuss our options. Options for what? A bridge loan against the inheritance. Timothy's business idea needs capital, and there's no reason to wait when we have this kind of asset backing. The inheritance you'll receive when I die, I said calmly, which could be decades from now. She waved dismissively. Banks understand estate planning. They'll work with us. I returned to my newspaper. Good luck with that. She left, and I counted down. It took 3 hours. The front door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. Olivia stormed into the living room, her face flushed with rage and something else. Confusion, maybe the first dawning of fear. What did you do? She demanded. I looked up from my paper. I'm reading. You're shouting. Care to be more specific? The will. The bank wanted to see the full document for their assessment, so I brought them a copy and... She thrust papers at me. It's 9 pages. 9. Full of fine print and conditions and... Legal language, I finished. Yes. Wills tend to have that. You said you'd give us everything. I did give you everything. It's all in the will. House, savings, investments, all yours. With conditions. Her voice was rising, losing control. 10 years before we can sell? $15,000 a year to charity? That's not what we agreed to. We never agreed to anything, Olivia. You demanded. I complied. The will gives you exactly what you asked for, my entire estate. You just didn't ask about the terms. Timothy appeared behind her, holding his own copy of the will, face pale. Dad, the bank showed us. If we can't sell the house for 10 years, and we have to pay $15,000 annually, that's $150,000 in mandatory charitable giving over 10 years, I said helpfully. Yes, the Margaret Ellen Mitchell Memorial Fund, named after my late wife. You remember Margaret, Timothy? Your mother? He flinched. Olivia's hands were shaking. You tricked us. This is fraud. Fraud requires deception. I gave you a will to review. You signed it without reading past page 2. That's not fraud, Olivia. That's negligence. Your negligence. We'll contest it. On what grounds? You witnessed it. You both signed attestations that I was of sound mind and acting freely. Oregon law is very clear. Beneficiaries can witness wills, but in doing so they affirm the testator's competence. You can't contest it without admitting you perjured yourselves. The color drained from her face. You planned this. You sneaky old... Lawyer, I interrupted. The word you're looking for is lawyer. I'm a lawyer, Olivia. A state law specialist with 40 years of experience. Did you really think I'd just roll over because you bullied me? She was breathing hard, her perfect composure shattered. There has to be a way out. We'll find another lawyer. We'll, by all means, consult a lawyer. Get a second opinion. Get 12 opinions. They'll all tell you the same thing. You signed a legal document without reading it. That's on you. Timothy sank into a chair, still staring at the will. We're stuck. We're actually stuck here for 10 years. Only if you want the inheritance, I corrected. You could always refuse it. Walk away. The estate would go to charity immediately, and you'd be free to live your lives however you choose. Olivia's laugh was sharp and bitter. Right. Give up $1.2 million. Sure. Your choice. Keep the inheritance and follow the terms, or reject it and move on. But you can't have it both ways. She grabbed the will from Timothy's hands, flipping through pages frantically, looking for loopholes, escape clauses, anything. I'd spent weeks making sure there weren't any. The charity payments, she said. What if we just don't make them? Then you violate the terms and forfeit the entire inheritance. It's in Section 4, subsection C. The estate goes to the charitable trust instead. What if we sell the house anyway? Breach of contract, same result. Everything to charity. What if you die before the 10 years are up? I raised an eyebrow. Then the 10-year clock starts from my date of death. Did you actually wish me dead just now, Olivia? In front of witnesses? She turned away, gripping the back of the sofa. Her knuckles were white. Timothy looked between us, lost. There has to be something we can do. You can read documents before signing them, I suggested. Might have helped here. This is cruel, Olivia said, her voice tight. You're punishing us for wanting what's rightfully ours. Nothing was rightfully yours. It's my estate, earned over a lifetime of work. You felt entitled to it, demanded it, threatened me for it. I simply gave you exactly what you asked for, with the same consideration you've shown me these past months. We're family. Are we? Was it family when you threw away Margaret's photo albums, when you excluded me from Jake's birthday, when you discussed my death like a real estate transaction? I stood up, meeting her eyes. You wanted my money, Olivia. Congratulations. You'll get it. In 10 years. If you earn it. If you can stand to actually honor my wife's memory for once, instead of erasing it. She stared at me, and I saw it, the moment she realized she'd been outmaneuvered completely, that there was no appeal, no escape, no clever way out. She'd walked into a trap built from her own greed and assumptions. I underestimated you, she finally said. Yes, I agreed. You did. You saw an old man and assumed weak. You saw someone grieving and assumed broken. You forgot I spent 40 years protecting people from exactly this kind of manipulation. Timothy stood slowly. What now? Now, you decide. Keep the inheritance and live with the terms. Or walk away and start over. But those are your only options. I walked past them both, heading for the stairs. At the doorway I paused. Oh, and Olivia? You wanted to know if I'd regret signing that will? I smiled. Not for a second. You asked me to change it. I did. You just forgot to check the fine print. Behind me, I heard her collapse onto the sofa, the weight of the trap finally crushing her triumph. I climbed the stairs to my study, closed the door, and poured another whiskey. This time, I really had earned it. September 21st. Olivia left the house early, dressed in what I recognized as her power suit, the expensive navy one she wore when she wanted to intimidate people. She didn't tell me where she was going, but I knew. She was going to find a lawyer to break my will. Good luck with that. I spent the morning in my study, catching up on reading. Around 2 in the afternoon, I heard the front door slam. Footsteps pounded up the stairs, then back down. Olivia appeared in my doorway, face flushed, eyes bright with barely controlled fury. I just spent 3 hours with Marcus Chen, she said. Marcus Chen, one of Portland's top estate attorneys. Expensive choice. Do you know what he told me? I set down my book. I imagine he told you the truth. He said the will is unbreakable, that you played me, that I signed away any right to contest it by witnessing the document. Her voice was rising. He said the conditions are harsh, but completely legal under Oregon law. Marcus knows his business. He said I can't even challenge it until after you're dead, and if I do, that counts as violating the respect clause, and I lose everything, anyway. That's correct. Section 7, subsection B. Did you finally read the whole document? She crossed the room in 3 strides and slammed the will down on my desk. This is entrapment. This is elder abuse. This is legal, I finished. Every word, every clause, every condition. I spent 40 years writing documents like this, Olivia. I know exactly how far I can push the boundaries. You tricked us. I gave you what you demanded. A will making you and Timothy the sole beneficiaries. Everything else? That's what you get for not reading before signing. Timothy appeared behind her, looking smaller somehow, diminished. Dad, there has to be a way to negotiate, to find some middle ground. The middle ground was the original will. Half to you, half to charity. You rejected that. You demanded all of it. Well, now you have it, with strings attached. Strings? Olivia's laugh was sharp and ugly. These aren't strings, they're chains. 10 years trapped in this house. $15,000 a year to charities we don't care about. We can't use the money we're inheriting. You can use it, I corrected. The savings accounts, investments, those are accessible. You just can't sell the house for 10 years. And yes, you'll need to make annual charitable contributions in Margaret's name, honoring the woman whose memory you tried to erase. Olivia's hands clenched into fists. Your precious Margaret. Everything is about her, isn't it? She's been dead for 5 years, but you still worship her ghost. Careful, I said quietly. Why? What are you going to do? You've already done your worst. You've locked us into a prison sentence disguised as an inheritance. She leaned forward. Marcus said there's only one way out. If we reject the inheritance entirely, we walk away free. That's true. You're not forced to accept it. You can decline, and everything goes to the charitable trust immediately. You and Timothy can move out, start fresh somewhere else, build your own lives without waiting for my money. Timothy's face went pale. Olivia, we can't just... We can't what? Accept being trapped for a decade, watching every dollar while we pay $15,000 a year to organizations we don't believe in? All while your father sits here, probably living to 90 out of pure spite? I'm 68 and healthy, I confirmed. Could easily make it to 90, maybe longer. Men in my family tend toward longevity. My father made it to 93. The math was dawning on Timothy's face. If I lived another 25 years, he'd be 63 before he saw a dime. His tech startup would be a distant memory. Olivia would be 61, her dreams of luxury lifestyle long expired. This is revenge, Olivia hissed. Pure, petty revenge. No, I said. Revenge would be disinheriting you completely. This is justice. You wanted my money? You get it. But you have to prove you're worth it first. Live in the house you tried to sell. Support the causes Margaret cared about. Show me you can be trusted with a legacy before you inherit it. We already signed. We can't undo that. No, you can't. That's the point. Actions have consequences, Olivia. You spent months making my life miserable, counting down the days until I died so you could cash in. Now you get to spend 10 years earning what you thought you deserved for free. She stared at me, and I watched the reality settle over her like a weight. There was no escape, no loophole, no clever argument that would undo what she'd done. She'd walked into this trap with her eyes open, or at least she should have had them open. I hate you, she said finally. I know, but you're stuck with me, unless you want to reject the inheritance and leave right now. The silence stretched. Neither of them moved toward the door. That's what I thought, I said. You want the money too much to walk away, so you'll stay. You'll comply with the terms. And maybe, in 10 years, you'll have learned something about patience and humility. Olivia turned and walked out. Timothy lingered in the doorway. You really did this, he said quietly. You really trapped us. You trapped yourselves, son. The moment you started planning my funeral before I was sick, the moment you valued my estate more than my presence, I just made sure there were consequences. She won't forgive this. I don't need her forgiveness. And honestly, Timothy, I'm not sure I need yours either. You had a choice. Every step of the way you could have stood up to her, defended me, been the son I raised. You chose her instead. His eyes glistened, but he didn't argue. We both knew it was true. The will stands, I continued. You can accept it or reject it, but those are your only options. Think carefully. Talk it over, but decide soon because I'm done having this conversation. He nodded once and left. I sat in my study as evening fell, listening to them argue downstairs. Olivia wanted to reject the inheritance, burn it all down out of spite. Timothy kept reminding her what they'd be walking away from. $127 million, even with the restrictions. Eventually, the arguing stopped. I heard their bedroom door close. They'd stay. Of course they would. Greed always won, in the end. September 26th. Olivia made one last desperate attempt to escape the trap. She called Jonathan Wright's office and demanded an emergency meeting. To discuss irregularities in the will, she told his secretary. Jonathan agreed, probably out of professional courtesy, though he must have known what was coming. I wasn't invited to this meeting, but Jonathan called me afterward. She's not accepting reality well, he said, dry humor in his voice. I imagine not. What did she want? To invalidate the will, to claim you were under duress when you signed it, or that she was deceived about the contents. She brought a different attorney with her this time, not Marcus Chen. Someone younger, hungrier, looking for a fight. And I showed them the notarization, the witness signatures, the video recording I made of the signing ceremony, standard procedure in my office. You were clearly competent, clearly understood what you were signing. Olivia and Timothy both acknowledged reviewing the document. It's ironclad, Harlan. Thank you, Jonathan. The other attorney asked if there was any way to modify the terms. I told him the testator would have to agree to amendments, and since the testator is alive and competent, they'd need your consent. I smiled, which I won't be giving. I assumed as much. Mrs. Mitchell did not take that well. How not well? She started crying, then yelling. Then she demanded to read the entire will again, every single page, as if she'd find a loophole on her 5th reading that she'd missed the first 4 times. And there isn't one. You know there isn't one. I watched you craft this document, Harlan. It's brutal, but it's perfect. September 27th. I was reading in the living room when I heard a crash from upstairs, then another. Olivia was throwing things in her bedroom. Timothy's voice, trying to calm her down, getting shouted over. I kept reading. Eventually she came downstairs, eyes red, makeup smeared. Timothy followed, looking exhausted. We're staying, she said flatly. We're accepting the terms. We don't have a choice. You always have a choice, I replied. You're choosing money over freedom. That's on you. Where would we go? We've spent everything we had, assuming we'd inherit soon. We're in debt. We have nothing. You have each other. You have Timothy's skills. You could rebuild. In our late 30s, starting over from nothing. Don't pretend this is generous, Harlan. You designed this to hurt us. I designed this to be fair. You get everything, but you have to earn it. Live in the house for 10 years. Support Margaret's causes. Prove you're not just vultures waiting for a corpse to pick clean. She wiped her eyes, smearing mascara further. I hope you live forever. I hope you make it to 100, just so you can watch us suffer longer. If I make it to 100, you'll be 68. Same age I am now. Maybe by then you'll understand what it feels like to be dismissed and devalued for your age. Timothy put a hand on her shoulder. Liv, let's just go. But she had one more thing to say. You know what the worst part is? You won. You completely won. And there's nothing we can do about it. The worst part, I corrected, is that you brought this on yourselves. I didn't attack you. I defended myself. There's a difference. They left for a walk, I suspect to avoid destroying anything else in the house they'd now be maintaining for the next decade. September 28th. The final meeting with Jonathan Wright wasn't my idea. It was Olivia's. One last attempt to find mercy, maybe, or just to have the reality confirmed by an objective third party. We sat in his conference room again. Jonathan had the will in front of him along with his notes from our previous sessions. Mrs. Mitchell, he began professionally, I understand you have questions about the document. I want to understand if there's any way to modify it, any legal precedent for renegotiating terms. Jonathan glanced at me. I shook my head slightly. The testator would need to agree to any modifications, Jonathan said. Mr. Mitchell, are you willing to discuss amendments? No. Olivia's hands clenched on the table. That's it? Just no? No consideration? No negotiation? You had your chance to negotiate, I said, when you threw away Margaret's photo albums, when you tried to exclude me from Jake's birthday, when you planned to sell my house before I was cold in the ground. You used up all your negotiation capital. Mr. Wright, surely there's something. Mrs. Mitchell, Jonathan interrupted gently, I've reviewed this document extensively. It's legally sound. The conditions are harsh, but not illegal. You have 2 options. Accept the inheritance with its conditions, or reject it entirely. There is no third option. But I signed as a witness. I didn't know what I was signing. You signed a legal document without reading it. That's not grounds for invalidation. You had every opportunity to review the full text. You chose not to. Olivia stood abruptly. The color had drained from her face. She swayed slightly, gripping the edge of the table. You all right? Timothy asked, standing too. I can't, she whispered. This can't be happening. There has to be a way out. There isn't, Jonathan said simply. I'm sorry, but the document is binding. She tried to read through the will again, hands shaking. flipping pages desperately. I watched her eyes scan the dense legal text, really seeing for the first time, just how thoroughly trapped she was. 10 years, 15,000 annually, no sale, no escape. The paper slipped from her fingers. Her eyes rolled back. She collapsed. Timothy caught her before she hit the floor, lowering her carefully while Jonathan called for help. She came around after a few seconds, disoriented and crying. I stood up slowly, looking down at both of them, Timothy holding his wife on Jonathan Wright's floor, both of them finally understanding the full weight of their greed. "Greed costs more than you thought," I said quietly. Then I walked out. In the parking lot, I stood by my car for a moment, breathing Portland's cool autumn air. Inside that office, Olivia and Timothy were facing their future. 10 years minimum in my house, paying tribute to Margaret's memory, unable to access the wealth they'd killed our relationship to obtain. They'd get the money, eventually, if they lasted, if they met every condition, if I didn't live another 20 years out of sheer stubbornness. But they'd never get back what they'd lost: trust, family, dignity. I drove home alone. The house was quiet when I arrived, and it would stay that way for a few more hours while they processed everything at Jonathan's office. I made myself dinner, a proper meal, not the scraps and leftovers I'd been surviving on, poured a good whiskey, sat in Margaret's favorite chair, and looked at the garden she'd planted. "I think you'd approve," I said to the empty room. "They'll take care of your causes now, whether they want to or not." For the first time in months, I felt at peace. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, patient, thorough. Sometimes it's a document signed in good faith by people who never bothered to read the fine print. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.